Welcome to a world where darkness hides in the corners of everyday life. From abandoned roads in the desert to shadows lurking in your own home, the stories you're about to hear are real, or at least real enough to make your heart race. In these 20 chilling tales, you'll encounter strangers who shouldn't be there, unseen dangers watching your every move, and moments where survival comes down to instinct alone. Some happened in quiet neighborhoods, others on lonely roads, and some in places you'd never expect. Brace yourself. Keep your doors locked, your eyes open, and your mind ready. Once you step into this collection, nothing will feel completely safe again. Are you ready to enter the darkness? I moved in with my dad when I was 10 years old. Everything about the place was new to me, and I didn't know anyone in the neighborhood. The only family we knew was a single mom with 3 kids. My dad was friends with her, so naturally we spent some time around them. Luckily, one of her kids was a girl who was a couple of years older than me. She was 12 when we first met. Over the next few years, we got to know each other a little. We weren't exactly close friends, but we shared the same group of people and saw each other often. One night, my friend Rob was hanging out at her house with her and her younger brother. They were alone because their mom was working late that night. Their mom had recently been helping a woman through her job and had gotten to know her fairly well. During one of their conversations, she learned that the woman's sister had been staying in a mental institution, but had recently been released. No one thought much of it at the time. That night, while Rob and the others were inside the house, someone knocked on the door. The girl assumed it was her mom. Apparently, their mom had a specific way of knocking whenever she came home. Without thinking, she walked over and opened the door. Rob immediately panicked. He wasn't supposed to be there, and if her mom caught him inside the house, he knew he'd be in serious trouble. So without asking questions, he quickly climbed out the window and ran back toward his own house down the road. He didn't even look back. But the person standing at the door wasn't their mom. It was the sister of the woman their mother had been helping. Somehow, she had figured out where the family lived. From conversations with her sister, she had also learned the mother's work schedule and that the kids would sometimes be home alone. And that night, she decided to visit. What happened next is something I never learned the full details of, and honestly, I'm glad I didn't. The only thing we know for certain is that my friend's younger brother managed to escape and run to a neighbor's house to call the police. When the police arrived, the scene inside the house was something no one in the neighborhood would ever forget. The woman who had come to the door that night, Delaney, had attacked my friend. The details were horrifying, and most of us only heard pieces of the story through adults whispering about it later. My friend's younger brother had managed to escape and reach a neighbor's house. He was the one who called the police, shaking and crying while trying to explain what had just happened. By the time officers entered the house, it was already too late. Delaney had brutally murdered my friend just a week before Christmas. She had left the body in the bathtub. The entire neighborhood was shaken by what had happened. No one could believe something so horrific could occur in such a quiet area. Even the investigators were disturbed by the scene. They searched the entire house and eventually found the missing evidence hidden among the Christmas presents that had been wrapped and placed around the home. For weeks, the neighborhood was filled with police cars, reporters, and investigators trying to understand why it happened. I was young at the time, but I remember the silence that fell over everyone afterward. Parents wouldn't let their kids play outside anymore. Doors stayed locked. People watched strangers much more carefully. I wasn't allowed to attend her funeral. My parents said I was too young to see something like that. But even now, years later, I still remember her and how suddenly everything changed that winter. This happened to my wife's grandmother about 15 years ago, back when my wife and I were still dating. Her husband had passed away about a year earlier. After his death, she tried to keep herself busy and avoid feeling lonely. One of the things she started doing was volunteering at the local library. It gave her something to do and allowed her to socialize with people again. The library usually closed around 5 p.m. During the winter months, that meant it was already getting dark by the time she began walking home. One evening, after finishing her volunteer work, another volunteer offered to give her a ride home, but she politely refused. She always believed that walking kept her healthy and strong, and she didn't want to lose that routine. Her house was about a mile away. The walk took her through a lightly wooded area in South Texas. It was usually quiet and peaceful, and she had walked that same route many times before. But that night felt different. About halfway home, she noticed someone walking behind her. At first, it didn't seem strange. The person was simply heading in the same direction. But slowly, she realized he was getting closer, much closer. Normally, she wouldn't have thought much about it. After all, she wasn't exactly a fast walker at her age, so it made sense someone might catch up to her. But something about the man felt wrong. There was something about his presence that made her uneasy. She continued walking, trying to ignore the feeling creeping up her spine. Soon, the man was directly behind her, close enough that she could hear his footsteps clearly on the ground. Then, he matched her pace, staying just a step behind her. By that point, she knew something wasn't right. Up ahead, she could finally see the top of her driveway. Her house lights were on, which made it look like someone was already home. She just needed to make it a little farther, about 150 yards, then 100 yards. All the while, the man stayed right behind her. Later, she said that he was so close she could actually feel his breath on the back of her neck. When she was about 50 yards away from her driveway, it finally happened. A strong hand suddenly grabbed her shoulder from behind. A man's voice whispered close to her ear, "Don't turn around. Hand over your purse, or I'll cut you." For a moment, everything went completely silent. She froze. The man stood right behind her, confident that he had complete control over the situation. After all, he was threatening an elderly woman walking alone in the dark. What he didn't know was who he was dealing with. She paused for just a second. Then she calmly took one step forward. Before the man could react, she turned around quickly and pulled a small revolver out of her purse, a .38 she always carried for protection. Without hesitation, she fired. The bullet struck him in the neck. The man collapsed almost immediately. Police and emergency services arrived soon after. The attacker survived the gunshot, but was left in critical condition. He spent the next 5 years in a prison hospital before eventually dying from medical complications related to the injury. My wife's grandmother lived for many more years after that night. She passed away last year, but even near the end of her life, she would sometimes talk about that moment. And surprisingly, she always said the same thing. She wished she had waited just a little longer before pulling the trigger.
Story 3. When I was a kid, somewhere between 8 and 11 years old, my older sister used to babysit me whenever our parents went out. She was about 7 years older than me, so most of the responsibility fell on her. At the time, she had a habit our parents hated. She smoked. Because of that, my parents had a strict rule. If she was going to smoke, she had to do it outside. Whenever she went outside, I usually followed her. I'd run around the yard, play with random things, and mostly just annoy her like little brothers tend to do. One afternoon, while she was outside smoking, she suddenly noticed something strange. At the end of our driveway, a vehicle was sitting in the road. It was a white SUV with a bike rack mounted on top. The windows were so heavily tinted that you couldn't see anything inside. The car just sat there. At first, she tried to ignore it, but every time she went inside, the SUV would slowly drive away down the road and park in the nearby church parking lot. Then, the moment she came back outside again, it would return and stop at the end of our driveway. This strange routine repeated several times. It was definitely odd, but my sister was pretty brave. She tried to brush it off and pretend it wasn't a big deal. Until the next day. Our parents were out again, and once more she stepped outside for a cigarette. And just like before, the same white SUV appeared at the end of the driveway. This time, it stayed there longer. It didn't move, didn't leave. It just sat there, watching. I know it was watching her because when I didn't follow her outside, I would stand by the living room window and look toward the road. The SUV never moved. It simply remained parked there, facing our house. Eventually, my sister told our father about it. My dad happened to be a sheriff's deputy at the time. He immediately called the local police and filed a report. Officers came by and checked the area, but by the time they arrived, the SUV had already disappeared. There was no sign of it anywhere. Then, for months, nothing happened. Almost 9 months after the whole thing started, and about 4 months since the last time anyone had seen the SUV, it suddenly appeared again. At first, we thought maybe it was just a coincidence, but then it kept coming back. The same routine started all over again. Whenever my sister stepped outside to smoke, the white SUV would slowly drive up and stop at the end of our driveway. It would sit there quietly, watching. One afternoon, my sister finally had enough. Our parents weren't home, and the car had shown up again like usual. She turned to me and told me to stay in the carport while she went down the driveway to confront whoever was inside the vehicle. I remember watching her walk toward it. She made it about halfway down the driveway before something changed. Later, she told us that she suddenly felt an overwhelming sense of fear. It was like her body was warning her that if she took even one more step, something terrible would happen. She said she felt completely frozen, like pure instinct was telling her to stop. So she turned around and went back inside. Not long after that, our family car had to go into the shop for repairs. That meant we were all stuck at home one evening, both my parents, my sister, and me. My sister went outside to smoke like she normally did. I went outside with her. And then, right on cue, the white SUV appeared again. This time, my sister immediately told me to run inside and tell our dad. I ran as fast as I could. My father grabbed his gun and walked quickly down the driveway toward the vehicle. He held the gun in his hand, but didn't point it at the SUV. The moment the driver saw him coming, the SUV slammed on the gas. It sped down the road and peeled onto the nearby highway before anyone could stop it. Because my dad was a deputy, he carefully noted the vehicle's make, model, and other details. But the scariest part? The license plate had been completely covered with duct tape. No one could identify it. And after that night, we never saw the SUV again. I was about 4 or 5 years old when this happened. My parents had recently separated, and my mom and I were living in a small 2-bedroom apartment. Even though I had my own room, I almost never slept there. I preferred sleeping in my mom's bed whenever I stayed with her. Our apartment layout was simple. At the end of the hallway were the 2 bedrooms, directly across from each other. My mom's room was on one side, and mine was on the other. The apartment was on the first floor, and it was the middle of summer. Because of the heat, my mom usually kept the window in her room open at night. The window was directly behind the bed, right above the headboard.
One night, I woke up in the middle of the night. I remember sitting up in bed and looking toward the doorway. Our cat was sitting quietly in the doorframe of my mom's room. The door was open, and from where I was sitting, I could partially see into my own bedroom across the hall. Something about it felt strange. Our cat almost always slept in the bed with us, so seeing it sitting silently in the doorway in the middle of the night was unusual. As I watched it, the cat suddenly stood up, walked into my bedroom, and let out a loud meow. Confused, I turned toward my mom and gently shook her to wake her up. "Mom, something's wrong," I whispered. It took her only a few seconds to wake up and ask what was going on. But in those 3 or 4 seconds while I was waking her, something changed in the hallway. When we both looked back toward the doorway, there was a man standing there. He was right next to the door of my bedroom, and he was slowly stepping out of it. For a brief second, everything froze. My mom and I were both staring at the hallway and at the man who had just stepped out of my bedroom. Even though I was very young, I could feel the sudden tension in the room. My mom instantly realized that someone had been inside our apartment. To this day, I still don't understand how she reacted so quickly. Without saying a word, she grabbed me, lifted me up, and rushed toward the open window behind the bed. Then she did something I never expected. She pushed me straight out through the window. Luckily, it was only the first floor, and there was soft grass outside. I landed safely, confused and scared, but not hurt. A second later, my mom climbed out right behind me. As soon as we were both outside, she started screaming for help as loudly as she could. I joined her, crying and yelling while she held on to me. The noise quickly woke up some of the neighbors. Someone nearby called the police. Within minutes, officers arrived and searched the apartment, but strangely, they didn't find any clear signs that someone had forced their way inside. The only unusual thing they noticed was that the front door had been left unlocked. Because of that, the police believed the man had simply walked out through the front door when we escaped through the window. But my mom insisted that she had locked the door earlier that night, using both the deadbolt and the chain lock. About a week later, something even stranger happened. My mom was cleaning the kitchen when she opened a small closet where the water heater was kept. Inside, she discovered a notebook. Along with it were a pair of gloves and several gum wrappers. The notebook contained strange drawings and a list of names. My mom immediately called the police again, but by then, there wasn't much they could do except speculate. They believed the man had somehow entered the apartment earlier and had been hiding inside the house until we fell asleep, waiting. One day, while I was doing laundry in our basement, one of the lights suddenly burned out. Our basement was divided into 2 sections. The laundry room was separated from the rest of the basement by a wall and a door. To get upstairs, you had to leave the laundry room and walk through the other part of the basement where the stairs were located. Unfortunately, the light that burned out was in that main section of the basement, not in the laundry room, and it was the only light on that side. That meant the moment I stepped out of the laundry room, the rest of the basement was almost completely dark. I finished the laundry I had started, but the entire time, I kept thinking about the walk I'd have to make through the dark basement to reach the stairs. Eventually, I had no choice. I opened the laundry room door and stepped into the darkness. The basement was quiet. Too quiet. I slowly started walking toward the stairs, trying not to think about how dark everything was around me. I had made it about halfway across the basement when suddenly, I heard something, a loud, disturbing cackle. It sounded like the kind of laugh people make when they try to imitate a witch, but this one sounded much worse. Imagine a witch who had been smoking for 50 years, her voice rough, deep, and broken. That's exactly what it sounded like. And the worst part? It came from directly behind me. I didn't hesitate for a second. I bolted straight for the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest like it was trying to escape. I didn't look back. I just ran until I reached the top and slammed the basement door behind me. I waited for my dad to come home before I even thought about going back down to change the light bulb. The cackle had shaken me so badly that I didn't want to risk being alone in the basement again. Once my dad arrived, he replaced the bulb without incident. Since that night, I've never heard the cackle again. To this day, I haven't told anyone else in the house about it. I didn't want anyone else to know what had happened. Even talking about it now gives me chills. It was one of those moments where you know something is wrong, but you can't explain it. And no matter how rationally I try to think about it, part of me still believes that someone or something was in that basement with me. This happened to a friend of mine a few years ago. We'll call her Minji. She's in her early 20s and works as an English tutor in South Korea. One evening, Minji was tutoring a high school boy. They had been studying late, and by the time they finished, the buses had stopped running. The boy lived far enough away that getting home without transportation was impossible. He asked Minji if he could stay overnight on her apartment floor and catch the first bus in the morning. Minji was hesitant. Inviting a teenage male student to spend the night in her apartment didn't feel safe at all. But the boy begged her. After several minutes of persuasion, she finally relented. They returned to her one-room apartment. She got into bed while he laid a blanket on the floor and tried to sleep. A few hours later, around 2 a.m., the boy suddenly woke her. "I'm really hungry," he said. "Let's go get something to eat." Minji was stunned. It was the middle of the night. She tried to tell him to go back to sleep, suggesting there was some instant ramen in the kitchen, but he was insistent. He didn't want ramen. He wanted to go to a 24-hour restaurant nearby. After several more minutes of convincing, Minji finally agreed to walk with him to the restaurant. As soon as they stepped onto the street, the boy turned to her and said something terrifying. "I'm not really hungry. I woke up in the middle of the night and saw a man sleeping under your bed." Minji froze. When they returned to the apartment, the police discovered that a homeless man had been living there under her bed for 2 whole months. The boy had only noticed him because he was lying on the floor and could see directly underneath. The police were shocked. The man had somehow managed to live under Minji's bed for 2 months without her noticing. He had been moving around quietly, eating her food and using her bathroom when she wasn't looking. Minji couldn't believe it. She had always been careful about locking her apartment door, yet somehow he had found a way in. The authorities investigated and eventually removed him from the apartment. He was homeless and mentally unstable, but thankfully he hadn't harmed anyone. Even after the incident, Minji said she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched in her own home. For weeks, she double-checked every corner, every closet, and under every piece of furniture. That night taught her a lesson she would never forget. Sometimes danger is closer than you think, and it can hide in plain sight. I was driving alone on a long shortcut from 29 Palms, California to Albuquerque, New Mexico. The road was mostly 2 lanes, cutting through vast, empty desert. The only small town along the way was Amboy, which was nearly abandoned. From there, the road climbed into a mountain range between Amboy and I-40. It was afternoon, and I had the road almost entirely to myself. The sun was hot, the desert was quiet, and the only sounds were the tires on the asphalt. As I drove through a narrow canyon lined with tall grass on both sides, I noticed something in the middle of the road up ahead. I slowed down to take a closer look. It was a red Pontiac Fiero stopped sideways across both lanes. The trunk was open, and clothes were scattered everywhere. Two bodies lay face down on the road, a man and a woman. My heart immediately started pounding. Being a Marine, I reached under the seat, pulled out my 9mm pistol, and chambered around. Something about the scene felt wrong. It didn't feel natural. The bodies looked too carefully placed. It felt staged, as if it were some kind of ambush. I scanned the area quickly. There was a narrow line I could drive through without hitting the people. I dropped the car into first gear, stayed alert, and carefully drove past the Fiero and the bodies. I made it about 200 feet forward and slowed down, trying to catch my breath and calm my racing heart. Then, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The two bodies I thought were lifeless were moving. They had gotten to their knees, and from the tall grass on either side of the road, 20 or so more people emerged. I didn't know what they wanted or why they were there, but instinct told me to get out of there immediately. I slammed the gas pedal to the floor and didn't let up until I reached the I-40 East on-ramp.
I never looked back until I was safely on I-40. Even then, my mind was racing, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I'll never know what would have happened if I had stopped or tried to approach the Fiero. The people, or whatever they were, disappeared into the tall grass as quickly as they had appeared. I was alone, miles from anyone else, and all I could do was drive, heart pounding, praying that I didn't encounter them again. For the rest of the trip, I stayed hyper-aware, scanning every shadow, every bend in the road. That drive left me with a lesson I'll never forget. In the middle of nowhere, things aren't always what they seem. Some dangers are completely unexplainable, and sometimes just surviving is the only victory.
A few friends and I were out night fishing along the James River. We had a small fire going on the shore, drinks in hand, and the usual casual conversation that comes with a relaxed evening. Then, almost suddenly, everything changed. All of us stopped talking at once. It was as if a switch had been flipped. We froze in place, staring across the river. Something or someone was watching us. The feeling was immediate and oppressive, like a weight pressing down on our chests. At first, we tried to shake it off, joking around to calm ourselves, but the unease didn't fade. Then it happened. A sound erupted from the opposite shore. It was blood-curdling. None of us had ever heard anything like it before. It was a scream, but not a normal one. It sounded inhuman, raw, guttural, like a wild person being gutted alive. No words, just a scream. We froze, staring at the river, every hair on our bodies standing on end. Another scream followed, even louder and more piercing than the first. By that time, several of us were already scrambling for our trucks, grabbing firearms in case the source came closer. We returned to the shoreline, weapons ready, our eyes fixed on the dark opposite bank. And then, a third scream sounded, but this time it came from our side of the river, just a yard away, coming from the bushes. Every one of us bolted. We left most of our equipment behind and ran to our trucks. As we reached our trucks, the scream erupted one more time, just beyond the tree line. We floored it, leaving the James River behind as fast as we could. No one spoke. No one looked back. Even after we were far away, the sound echoed in our minds. None of us ever returned to that spot at night. We never discovered what had made the screams. All we knew was that it was something terrifyingly real and dangerously close. That night left a mark on all of us. The river, once peaceful, had become a place of fear. Even talking about it years later, we can still feel the chill that ran down our spines. It was a Friday night, and my friend was supposed to pick me up for a hockey game in the city. We were running late, so the car ride was rushed but fun.
I didn't even realize that I had left my phone at home. During the game, I started to worry. Maybe I had dropped it somewhere? I borrowed my friend's phone to call my number, hoping someone at home would pick up. After 3 rings, someone answered, but they remained completely silent. I shouted into the phone, explaining that I was just checking if I'd left my phone at home. Still, there was no response. At first, I assumed it was my little brother playing a prank. I hung up and tried to put it out of my mind. Later that night, when I got home, my parents weren't there. I called them and they said they had gone out to eat and see a concert at the park with my little brother. They assured me they had left soon after I had and would be home in about half an hour. That's when a sick feeling settled in my stomach. How could someone at my house have answered my phone if my family wasn't home? Suddenly, I heard the back door to my house open and close. Panic surged through me. I ran outside to the neighbor's house and called 911. The police arrived quickly, but there were no signs of forced entry. It seemed that someone had entered our home while we were all out and left nothing stolen. The scariest part? We could have easily fallen asleep with a stranger in the house. A while back, a family had moved in next door to us. They had a son who was, well, twisted, obsessed with slasher movies. He always wanted to talk about them, and he had a disturbing fascination with my daughter. She was 7 at the time, and he would strike up conversations with her when she walked home from school or even from their backyard, talking over the fence. One day, it escalated. He called our house, asking to speak to her. That was the final straw. I went over, confronted him, and made it clear that he was never to contact my family again. His parents promised he would stay away. But then, things got even stranger. My daughter was always imaginative and a little paranoid, often worrying about monsters under her bed. One night, she told me there was something living in her closet. At first, we dismissed it as childhood imagination, but weeks later, the signs became undeniable. One night, while my wife and daughter were at my mother's for a girls' night, I was asleep on the couch watching HBO. It was around 2 a.m. when I received a call from our neighbor. The neighbor's son, the creepy one, claimed that our child was missing. I rushed to check, and indeed, the door to my daughter's room was open. Inside, there was a silhouette pacing back and forth. When the deputies entered the room, they found the neighbor's son in my daughter's closet. He had set up a hideaway there, watching her sleep. It was one of the most terrifying moments of my life. This story happened during my time serving in Vietnam, and it's one of those things most people wouldn't want to hear. There was a man I knew who was completely unhinged. He loved slasher movies and had a habit of tormenting stray animals. He was 19 at the time, and my daughter was 7. He would always try to engage her in conversation, even when she was walking home from school. He would shout over the fence while she played in the backyard, trying to get her attention. What really alarmed me was when he called our house asking to speak to her. That was it. I went over immediately and confronted him. His parents told him to stay away, and I warned him that I never wanted to see him near my family again. But things only got weirder after that. My daughter, being imaginative and slightly paranoid, often said she thought there were monsters under her bed. One night, she told me that something was living in her closet. I dismissed it at first, thinking it was just her imagination. But a few weeks later, I realized something strange was happening. One night, my wife and daughter were at my mother's for a girls' night. I was asleep on the couch watching HBO around 2 a.m. I got a call from the neighbor, the creepy son again. He said, "We saw you walking around and now our son is missing." I was groggy and confused. No one else had been up. I ran outside to grab my shotgun, and by the time I looked, the sheriff was pulling up to the neighbor's house.
I could see the lights in my daughter's room and a silhouette pacing back and forth. When the deputies went inside, they found him, waiting in her closet. He said he liked to watch her sleep in the moonlight.
The scene inside my daughter's room was horrifying. The neighbor's son, the same twisted teenager, had created a little setup in her closet just to watch her sleep. I was shaking with anger and disbelief. How could someone get that close to my family without anyone noticing? The deputies immediately arrested him and removed him from the house. Thankfully, nothing physically happened to my daughter, but the psychological impact was enormous. From that night on, we triple-checked locks, doors, and windows. Every time someone approached the house, we were hyper-aware. The experience left a permanent mark on all of us. It's one thing to fear something in your imagination, but it's another to realize that someone real and dangerous is hiding inside your home while you sleep. Even today, years later, the memory of that night still sends chills down my spine.